Hello, I'm Laura Furiosi, divorced mother of 3, and I'm here with my mother, Lynette Galvin, with 35 years' experience in family law. You're listening to the Divorce Course podcast. Through our candid discussions, we hope to help you through your divorce or de facto separation. We will be answering the most commonly asked questions and covering the stages and steps that you will face on your way to freedom. How do you know what's important in your case or not? There may be some events that have occurred in your journey that have really upset you, but they may not actually matter in the court's eyes. So today we're going to be discussing the things that aren't important in the eyes of the family court or may not be. Hi, Mum.
Hello, Laura.
So
hello, everyone.
That's a bit of a mouthful to try and explain.
It is, isn't it?
But basically, you can tell it to the judge is something that maybe your clients have yelled over their shoulders to their exes.
Or thought it at least.
Or where they've gone, just tell it to the judge.
Yeah.
And what do you mean by that?
Yeah. So it's really what evidence you bring to your case if you're in court, like what you focus on in your affidavit and in any of the documents for mediation. Mm-hmm. Some of the things people think are like real gotcha moments don't actually have any impact. So you need to know what things are not important so you can focus on the stuff that is.
Have you seen in the past at mediations or in affidavits maybe where someone's just written all the stuff that really matters to them, but you're just reading it going on, none of this is relevant?
I completely missed the point. And it's only human. Yeah. I understand that, you know, but you really, if you're going to win a case, you've got to show the judge or the mediator the factors that will impact properly in the eyes of court. So you've really got to look at the sections. If it's property, section 79, 75, and the de facto equivalent. If it's kids, look at the law. And that is really what the law is really a list of the things that really matter to the court.
Okay. Yeah. So today we're going to be listing through the common things that we've discovered that people think that's going to matter in their mediation or in negotiations or in court, but in the end, it doesn't mean squat.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, people sometimes can't believe that it
Some of these doesn't matter.
Yeah, so it's very hard to get your head around when you're in the moment.
Yeah, and as a disclaimer, this is Australian, and also it's general advice because sometimes some of these things that we're going to list may matter in your case because it's in the context of something.
Yeah, well, context is everything. Yeah. And sometimes a behaviour might sound petty and you might not think you need to worry about it, but if it's happening over and over and over again and it's become having an impact on people, you know, like, for example, I'm just giving an example, for someone who always turns the light switches off to save electricity. So what? That's not a problem, you know, that's not abuse, that's not anything. But if they do it incessantly so that it impedes their ability to function, then you might have to put it in. So, yes, so this is general advice only and be guided by your lawyer and your reading of the legislation. Yeah. But let's get into them, Laura.
Okay, so in order to not end up with an affidavit or in a mediation or in negotiation arguing things that are irrelevant or technically not relevant to the law, let's start. We're going to do it in 3 different parts. We're going to do things about the kids, things about property, and then we're going to do a little bit about court as well, things in court. So first of all, let's go down the kids' family life rules situation. So number 1, everybody thinks the court is, or the judge or the mediator is going to care about cheating.
Yeah. Oh, is that about kids?
Well,
cheating.
Unless they make new kids, I guess. But does it matter?
No.
Are you sure?
Absolutely certain.
So you're telling me that if you went to mediation and you're like, but he cheated on me, you don't get a extra bit of anything?
No. Look, honestly, to lawyers, that goes in one ear and out the other.
Okay.
Because not that we don't care, but the Act doesn't care.
Horrible.
Because it is a no-fault divorce system we have.
Okay.
And if our listeners think it's not fair, I think it's because you don't understand the old laws that we had, which were terrible, where you had to prove cheating to be able to get a divorce or desertion or cruelty. And that was really hard on everybody.
Yeah.
So this no-fault divorce that we have now means that as long as you've been separated for 12 months, you can get a divorce. And no fault.
So I know with the divorce, but with children's matters, if your ex has cheated on you, so that doesn't affect your...
No.
Does it show the type of person they are?
No.
So that doesn't matter either?
No.
Okay, so you're going to have to lump that up and go, all right, I'll be telling that to my mum, my friends.
Yes.
But don't bother telling it to judge. But probably in context, do you put it in there, or they really just don't care?
No, I seldom mention it.
Right.
So it's usually the narrative is we started living together on this date, we separated on that date.
Mm-hmm.
And the why doesn't matter. And when you think of it from the court's point of view, they can't get into it. You know, it's not relevant. It's a no fault.
Okay.
And so, and that it's just a waste of everyone's time to put the details in.
Okay. All right. Another one that we get asked all the time is they get a new boyfriend or they get a new girlfriend.
Yeah.
Does the court care about that, or does it matter in mediation or negotiations?
You're talking in context of the kids.
Yes. So like they go, they've got like a new girlfriend every 5 weeks, or they've got a new girlfriend. She's moving in. My kids aren't comfortable with them yet.
All of that. Oh, it's so sad, isn't
I know.
it? She's, you know, I've had them where the new person's already in the room, in the family bed, in the matrimonial bed within a week or two.
Boom.
If you've left. No, you can't.
And that would really matter. Like it would really matter. But in the eyes of negotiation and mediation, they'd be like, tell it to the judge. No one's going to care.
Because the court accepts that people have different styles of parenting. People aren't supposed to go into suspended animation. It is a bit thoughtless of that person to inflict that on the children, and but the court doesn't want each party reaching out beyond their own marriage to try to control what the other person does.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
You just have to meditate and let that go.
Yes. All right. Or talk to your friends, complain.
Yep. Write it in your diary.
All right. The next one that you've told me that they don't care about, and it's not really worth even arguing in mediation, is the care for the kids when they have a babysitter.
Oh, yeah.
So we've had a lot of people write in and go, well, he asked for 50-50. He's got 50-50 at the moment, but when he does have them, they've got a nanny or a babysitter and he's never there. He never sees them. He doesn't do anything with them, or they go over their place and he's not there. He just leaves some food on the table for them kind of thing.
Yes.
Yeah. So you're telling me that doesn't matter?
No, well, it never actually happens that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. The children, so it used to matter. The court used to say, look, if you're not having the children, if you're not with them, focusing on them, then all you're doing is depriving the other parent of time with the children, so give them back. But now the court says it's better for the kids to experience normal life in both households, whatever that looks like. And so if it's that, you know, grandma comes over and minds them all day and your ex still goes out partying once a week or twice a week, that doesn't matter, as long as the children are cared for in a sort of fashion. And if you think about it, you wouldn't want the other person saying, oh, you know, she had the kids and she went to a pottery class. How bad's that? She left the kids with the neighbour, you know, like, no.
So wait, that used to happen in court?
Oh, my word.
And why did it change?
Well, just practicalities, I think, and a slew of cases and studies that said that the children are better to experience normal life with each family. So otherwise, the person who used to get them, who was constrained in what they could do, would put their own life in suspended animation, and the kids would have the best time, like absolutely focused. And then they go back to the sort of regular parent who's going, have you done your homework yet? Empty the dishwasher. So, you know, you ended up with the Disneyland type family and then you ended up with the other one. So I remember Judge Bell, he said, kids deserve to know both parents, warts and all. And I think especially as time got longer, it wasn't just like a little cameo performance where they went over from Saturday morning to Sunday night. It's when they were living a whole week there. You couldn't expect someone not to work.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
I think it's more normal.
So it doesn't matter too much, really. I guess you could use it in negotiations to say, hey, do you want me to look after the kids?
Yeah, that's right.
Because you need to get a babysitter. Do you want me to do it? That might upset them, though. But the judge isn't going to care.
No. The other thing, Laura, is that when the Family Law Act started, a lot of people had kind of more traditional roles where the mother was always home and the father usually did the work. And so with the mum sitting home twiddling her thumbs, it just made sense that she'd be the one who was minding the kids if you were going. And they have that first. If you really care about that sort of stuff, you can have a clause in that, and you can argue or negotiate for what they call first right of refusal. So if the other person has to go somewhere, they have to say to you, tell you and give you the option to mind the kids for them before they go to grandma or the neighbour or daycare.
Wow.
So people do that sometimes, but it does make for awkward conversations if you're not getting along.
Well, every single time you want to go away for the weekend or romantic getaway and you've got the kids, you have to message your ex and say, hey, I'm going to get a babysitter for the kids. Do you want them? Because that would be hard. I wouldn't be putting that in an order. And that's not for me. No.
Okay.
Okay. What if, and there's two more for the kids ones. What if the kids' routine is so totally different at one house?
It always is.
And like they stay up until midnight. They get up at 9 and get to school just on time. But at your place, you're working really hard to let them have a nice sleep and a nice bedtime at like 8. What's the thing there?
Yeah. Well, again, the children are the court accepts that kids should be exposed, I guess, to both parenting styles, and both parents have different styles. And even if when you were together, you were both in lockstep about bedtimes, meal times, and all of that, generally when they separate, people either become a bit oppositional and change all of that just because they can, or they were never really on board with it anyway. Oh, that was more his thing than mine. I'm doing it this way. And the kids adapt, and you can't control the other party. No, you can't say. Like if it's really important stuff like taking medication or maybe a medically required diet or treatment regime, that's one thing. But if it's just discretionary things like how much iPad they can do and when their times are for bed, you can't control that. So the children very quickly learn it's two different rules in two different houses, and they're fine with that. They adapt.
I mean, it would be great in an ideal world if both parents could still have the same rules, the same routines and everything. That would be best for everybody.
Absolutely.
But I understand that there's a lot of people that just can't do that.
Yeah.
So don't feel bad.
I don't ever see those people because they don't need lawyers.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Okay. Last one in the tell it to the judge. Pick up and drop off, hand over, they're 10 minutes late.
Yeah. Forget about it.
There's a phone call and they're 10 minutes late.
Yeah, no, don't waste the court's time.
So the judge does not care?
No, and you do run a risk of sounding a little bit petty. However, if the 10 minutes late mean you miss the plane or something, then that's why this is general advice only.
Or what if it's 10 minutes late every single time for 2 years? Or is it still doesn't really matter?
It doesn't really matter. You just adapt and adjust.
So it would really bug you, like really, really bug you. But I guess, and we've talked about this in the narcissist playbook. Or no, with Mia, who does the Grey Rock Consulting.
Oh, yes.
She said, you've got to learn how to change what you're doing to accommodate for the stuff. So if you've got a narcissistic type ex and they deliberately make the kids 10 minutes late because they know you're going to be doing something and they want to still mess with you, then just instead of arguing with them and demanding that they definitely be there on time, just make sure you organise things that give that buffer of them being late, I guess. So
that's
change what you can do because you can never change them.
No, that's exactly right. And if you complain about it, it just if they're doing it to annoy you, they aha.
That's why they're doing it. They want you to complain.
Yeah. And if you complain about it to the court, frankly, it just does sound petty.
Okay. All right. So let's go into property. We've used this argument before, and I actually do think we use the other term, but we're going to be politically correct, Mum. We're going to call it the lazy as argument.
Yes.
When it comes to property, negotiations, mediations, or court, why does the court not care about the lazy as argument, and what is it?
Okay, so the lazy as argument usually comes down to when we're trying to calculate contributions, non-financial contributions during the marriage. The argument that my clients, both sexes, both genders say is, they just, were lazy as the whole marriage. They never did anything. They just sat on that chair and I did this and I did that. The court doesn't accept that. The person who is there presumably does something, and you just sound like you're being a bit dramatic. And you can't discount the contribution of someone who is living in the house if they're not working. They just do. They just do.
Even if, and I believe some people that they just have just sat there.
Yep.
Like I heard of a case where the man in the UK pretended he was deaf and blind so that he could just sit, and turned out she's suing him in the UK. He pretended he was deaf and blind, so he just sat there and did nothing. So, but that's an extreme thing. But imagine that I know there are some people out there that just don't do anything at all. Yeah, they don't work. They don't clean the kitchen. They're
lazy
do the dishes.
With the kids.
They don't do anything. But even then,
you can't just say they did nothing. You can say that the better way of saying it to the judge is that you say, I did the majority of the work, and then go into explanation like, I'd go to work. When I got home, I'd come home at this time, I'd put dinner on, I'd put a load of washing on, I'd do this, I did that sort of thing. Just list the stuff you did is a better way of doing it.
To point out how much you did in the contribution.
It's really difficult for the court to accept that both parties didn't contribute equally non-financially.
Okay.
So if they really were lazy as...
What if they were in a coma?
Oh, well, then your contribution's higher.
Okay. All right, because that's provable. They did absolutely nothing. They were in a coma.
Or they were overseas for some of the trip.
Okay.
I worked in the mines. The court would accept that as well. Okay. And also post-separation, of course, when you're not together, if you've got the kids say all the time you'll be working by yourself. It matters too with renovations and things, like, if you've been the one that did all the painting and choosing of stuff. But the other person might have helped select the cabinets and furniture and so forth. So, I've never seen a case where there was zero contribution by a party found by the court.
Okay. All right. And in negotiations and mediations, can they be like, look, you did nothing. Let's be honest. You did nothing, so maybe I should get a bit more. Or does that not work in mediation either?
Yeah, they say that, but you go, no, I didn't. I was there. Okay. Even if all that happened was when you went out or when they went out, they left the kids with you. Mm-hmm. Even if you were just sitting playing games.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a contribution.
Right. The next thing tell it to the judge. You earned more during the marriage, or they earned more during the marriage. So in property, does that matter?
No, that's a big thing, because even some lawyers send me spreadsheets of how much their client earned in a given year compared to how much your client earned in a given year.
Really? Other lawyers?
Yes, I know.
So is this controversial, what you're saying, or are they just uneducated lawyers?
I re-educate them.
Okay.
But it's so because it's easy to interpret the financial contribution question when the court looks at contributions as, well, how much money did you bring in? But that's not the point of lump sum contribution. And as long as each of the parties is putting all of their salary towards the family, or most of their salary, then they're contributing equally. And that's my example I always use, and I've probably used it on this already, is if someone is a neurosurgeon and the partner is a cleaner at the same hospital or different hospital, their salaries would be wildly different. But they're both giving their whole efforts to raising, to bringing money in according to their capacity, I guess, to earn.
All right. Okay. So the who earns most argument doesn't fly. All right. This one's interesting. This is the swings and roundabouts one that you talk about that I'm like, what?
Yes.
And it's in regards to business.
Yes.
So you're saying in a family business, can you explain what it is that the court's like, well, you're invited to our free webinar. Whether you're stuck at the beginning of deciding to divorce or you're struggling to find your way through the legal jargon and fear of the unknown of the legal process, we are here to empower you to take control. Join us to learn what steps you can take, followed by a live Q&A where you get Lynn, my amazing mum, and family law accredited specialist to answer your questions. All you have to do is go to www.thedivorcecourse.com.au and click on Reserve My Seat. Register now for our free webinar to help you make the best decision for your future. We'll see you there. Hurry, spaces are limited, so don't miss out. Register today. All right, this one's interesting. This is the swings and roundabouts one that you talk about that I'm like, what?
Yes.
And it's in regards to business.
Yes.
So you're saying in a family business, can you explain what it is that the court's like, well, deal with it, it's swings and roundabouts?
Yes. So you'll often get people arguing that particularly when a business goes bad, oh, it wasn't my idea. That was the other person's complete idea. It was nothing to do with me. And I'm not going to accept that losses. We had this much money before they started that business and now we've got that much money. It's not my fault. I want it taken off their share or a negative contribution. And the judges over the years have just developed a kind of a, oh, really attitude because, and the classic response is, well, I suppose if the business made money, you'd have your hand out for a share of that business. And that's the truth. So the court assumes during a relationship, if you're in the marriage together and you were around when this business was done, then it's, it's yours and the other person's, whether it lost money or made money. So if it's got debts, they're joint debts. If it's got, that's general advice only. By and large, that is the case.
So what about if the other person, and we know some members, and where they don't have any idea what's going on in the business, but it is a family business, but they've been kept out and they don't know, and it's not really their fault.
Listen to Your Honour. It's not really their fault.
I'm just saying what everybody says. So I'm saying what I know people are thinking right now in the course.
Moment.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the court takes a bit of a hard-nosed look at that still. And they say, so there's an old saying, I'm surprised you didn't know it, swings and roundabouts. And the full saying is, what you lose on the swings, you make up on the roundabouts. And so at the court, that's an expression that
still doesn't make sense, just quietly.
Well, it kind of...
What do you lose on a swing?
Oh, don't be literal.
No, but Mum, what do you lose on a swing? Nothing. And what do you get on a roundabout? Nothing. You go back to the start. It's a stupid saying. That's why it's not used anymore.
Okay.
But anyway,
but yes, so you just take life's ups and downs together and you have to, while you're together. And the court's rather hard-nosed approach seems to be that if you've stayed, then you're agreeing.
Right.
If you don't leave.
Right.
And if you don't know, find out. And the court's the attitude has been a little bit aware, I guess, of how someone can be so vulnerable and so coerced that they can't find out.
Well, hopefully the courts will wake up to that. Is it only that they don't care when it's during the marriage? What about after you've separated and they deliberately do stuff?
Well, not just deliberately.
Or stuff up.
If they recklessly. So there's a really fabulous case of Koali. Mm-hmm. I think it's Kowal.
Oh, yes. You gave that to one of the members.
But just issued it to one of the members, sent them a copy of the case. In that case, the facts were that the husband, I think, he had control, I guess, of one of their rental properties after separation, and it took a while to get to court. And so he let some friends move in to rent the place, but he didn't organise a proper rent agreement and they actually didn't pay any rent. And I'm not sure, but I think they actually trashed the place so that the parties actually had less assets than they would have had if he'd been properly diligent and done that. And so, and if he'd done a proper agreement and managed the house property properly. And so that has gone in as a kind of negative contribution. Right. And that lowers his other contributions. So I think they took a few % off him because of that silly behaviour.
So they do care if it happens after. If he'd done that when she was married and not separated, they would have gone, well, you were there. You're an idiot. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
You're an idiot.
You're an idiot.
No, it was a joint decision. Yeah, it was a joint decision.
And to be fair, if it happens in the marriage, sometimes people just don't have any say in those situations.
I know.
But how do you prove that? I don't know.
Well, I think we're beginning to understand coercive control and power imbalances. And it's going to take a while, though, for the court to filter that through, I think, into property decisions during the marriage.
Right. Okay. Oh, well, that's hopeful, but
it's always evolving.
Sad as well.
Family law
swings and roundabouts, whatever that means. I'm going to Google it. Okay, next one. Now we're going to talk about things the judge doesn't care about if you're in court. Yes. Now, again, it's all general advice. This is Australia, and it's just things that you've observed.
Don't call us if a judge says, hang on a minute.
Yes, and don't say to a judge, I heard on the Divorce Course podcast, because we also...
General advice only.
This is general advice. It's just mum.
But by and large.
Yeah. This is what you've seen. Okay. Yeah. So... one of the things you've said here is making excuses to a judge for not following court directions. So people go to a thing called a mention or a directions hearing, and they say, you've got to do this document and this document by this date. You've got to do this and this by this date. And then you turn up to the next court event and you haven't done it. Can you give excuses to the judge where they will care, or most of the time they don't care?
It'd better be a good excuse.
That's really
all I'm
good
saying.
Excuse.
Yeah, because even if you're self-represented, the court expects you to comply, because they used to call them directions years ago, where you're directed to file a document at a certain time and directed, and they still have little remnants of that. But I think it was the 2006 amendments, they changed the impact of a direction, which is more like a suggestion with a strong emphasis from a judge, to an order. So they are actually now orders of the court. And it's just as bad as perhaps not going to a parenting course when you're ordered to go. So the judges actually order you to file these documents on a particular time. And it may be, if your failure to file documents is going to derail that little hearing or that case, that the court may order that you pay the other person's costs that are wasted. So even if you're self-represented, you'd better have a jolly good excuse for not getting a document in on time. There's a lot to be said for doing it early.
Have you ever seen a lawyer try to make an excuse for not having documents?
Always.
Really?
Yes, always.
And what does the
occupational habit.
What do judges say to that?
Well, they won't claim that they won't make the client pay if it's been the lawyer's stuffer, and they won't criticise too much. But now they can award costs against lawyers.
Wow.
So we're all on
Yikes.
notice. Yes, we're all on notice to comply with the court directions. And remember, every lawyer is an officer of the court. So they're our bosses. And we just have to, so you'll find most lawyers are like sweating blood if a deadline's coming up.
And you said this before, you said if you want the courts to listen, hand your documents in on time.
You go in like the good kid in class. Yeah. You've handed your assignment in, your nice clean face, good shoes, nice clothes. You turn up on time and you be polite.
You stand up straight.
Yep, and be polite.
And you do
so
your
that
homework.
You have nothing for the court to criticise you about. And I mean, that's stuff you can control. When a court is asked to make a decision about children or property, all you can do is give your best case and hope it works out. But as for obeying the court orders for filing and that, you can do that, and you can do it well and give yourself the best prospects then of the court thinking favourably of you, of a judge or a registrar thinking favourably of you. And also, if the other person files on time and you don't, you start off on the wrong foot. Yeah. And it's very nerve-wracking. So
right. Okay. Now, we should do another whole, like a whole episode on what they do care about, but that is literally just the Family Law Act section.
The various sections, 79 for marriages, section 60 for children, and if it's a de facto relationship, section 90. Yeah.
Okay, because that is a list of everything they care about.
Yeah. When you look at law, if you look at law and you look at the sections, they're all broken into A, B, C, D, or 1, 2, 3, 4. That's really, we should call it, this is what the court cares about.
Yeah.
Or only talk to the court about these things.
Yes.
Don't waste your breath on anything else.
Yeah.
And that's what relevant and pertinent is.
Yes.
Again, general advice only, but you can't really go wrong with doing it like a child almost. Do a grid up if you're doing your own court stuff.
Now let's talk about the different personality types, because we don't do that as much as we should.
Don't. Yeah,
so
you're right.
Naughty us. So when it's tell it to the judge stuff,
yes,
and it's in regards to maybe the children, the property, and you've got an avoidant person, is there anything that the judge would care about? Or the mediation would care about?
If they don't file their documents on time.
Yeah.
If they don't turn up.
So that does have an impact.
And sometimes an avoidant person's conduct would result in a loss to you. You know, like maybe there was a contract on the house when the prices were up and he wouldn't sign or she wouldn't sign it. That's relevant to the court because that's post-separation.
What if they don't turn up to mediation?
Whoa, bad job.
Okay, so that won't look good on them?
No, and if they don't file their documents, I mean, I asked a judge the other day to note that if the person didn't file the first time, if they don't file the next time, I wanted an undefended hearing. In other words, the court just looks at your documents. Yes. So there's big risks there. So avoidant people may find themselves getting orders made against them even if they didn't turn up.
And what about disclosure? So in mediation or negotiations, the avoidant person, they might not be a horrible person, they just don't want to deal with it, and they don't give you any disclosure. Does that matter in the court's eyes?
Well,
in the
it can slow you down, and in mediation, it can make you stuck. But your best bet is then to not think about disclosure. So disclosure for our listeners is when each of you gives the other person all of the documents you've got, whether they're electronic or real, like here are my bank statements for the last 12 months, here's my pay slip, here's my tax returns, here's my super. If they don't give it to you, your whole case can be sort of stuck, and the court might punish them financially, like make them pay your costs, but you're still stuck in limbo. So then I like to think about how can I find that out without going through them. And there's lots of things you can do.
And we've got an episode called DIY Disclosure, where Mum gives all her tricks and tips.
And how to find it out.
So I will put that in the show notes so you can listen to that next if you are in that spot.
Including if they won't give you a value for something, just putting some really high value on it.
Exorbitant high value.
Not ridiculous, but possible high values. And you'll pretty quickly find out they'll prove to the contrary. No, it's not worth that.
Yes, general advice only. Okay, so that's avoidant. What about manipulative and controlling? Does the judge care about anything when it comes to having a manipulative or controlling ex?
I think that they tend to lie in their material, and you won't find out, the judge won't find out until the final hearing that it's a lie, because they'll just, put whatever they want to in the affidavit. So
what about a mediation?
Yeah, the same thing. They'll often not mediate properly because they're wanting to mess with you, and they want it their way. You can still do things to sort of
But you can't really tell the judge, in the mediation they messed around and wasted the whole day.
No, you can't, because mediation is completely confidential.
But if the judge, if you end up with a manipulative, controlling person and they don't care about them cheating, they don't care about the impact on you, they don't care about the new boyfriend, they don't care about the babysitter, do they care about the lying?
It's one way that you can get your case across. So if you can prove any of the things are actually lies, manipulative and controlling people often sort of do half-truths and leave things out. But if you can catch them out in one or two lies, usually by documentation you've got, then the court will then usually have doubts about everything else they said, even if you can't disprove it. And what they call that is his or her credit is damaged. And so whenever the court has your word against their word, the court should prefer yours because you haven't been proven to lie, but they have been proven to lie. Actually, lying in court's absolutely fatal. If you get caught out on anything...
You don't get the death sentence.
No. But it's really bad for your case. Once you tell a fib and you get proven to have told that fib, every other time there's a conflict between what you say and the other person says, the court's going to prefer the person's evidence who hasn't been caught out in a lie so far.
Well, there's a plus to anybody who's dealing with a horrible narcissist or manipulative, controlling person. You just got to wait till the end.
That's the trouble, and that's the hardest thing.
That's the hard bit.
That's really hard. It's really hard, and I've been there to read an affidavit where it says something awful about you, and you know it isn't true.
Yeah.
And you're so upset because you know this person knows you better than that.
And you can probably prove it, but you have to prove it at the end or when you get the chance to.
Yeah.
So I guess those people, if you're listening, stand your ground, hold your truth, keep your stuff together, don't lose, don't go mental, and don't lose it. Yeah. And then hopefully when you get to the end, it'll all come out. Yep. They'll lose their credit, whatever that means, and there's swings and roundabouts.
The judge won't have the judge won't have any confidence in what they say. And it's always fun to get a manipulative and controlling person in the witness box because they won't answer a question straight answer.
Right.
And so you'll ask them something and you can see their mind working and saying, why is she asking me that question? What's the best answer to give?
Yeah.
And you can see it on their faces.
Yeah.
And you can see them give sort of half questions. And so it's easy to trick them. You ask a few straightforward questions and they're vague and dodgy with the answers, and nothing upsets a judge more than that because he's trying to find out.
He or she
is trying to find out what is the truth here.
Yes.
And so the barristers or solicitors are asking those questions to give the judge an answer to that question. And if they go, it's kind of like, they don't say it, but it's like, why? What have you heard? Why? What have you...
It's like a cat and mouse game.
So you work, don't you? Oh, you could say that.
Okay. Oh, really?
I've seen that. You work, don't you? Oh, you could say that.
Okay.
Well, you're on a high salary. I suppose so. I mean,
gosh.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So that's manipulative controlling. Sorry to those people out there. Hugs, big
it's hard.
Hugs.
You've got to hold on.
Then you've got
high conflict.
High conflict.
Yeah. They usually will stop if you can produce the evidence on things, but they will argue every blooming point.
Right.
And so you're going to have to anticipate that. The court will be just looking for the proof when it comes down to that. There are some rules in place now to stop people arguing silly points, but I don't know how successful that's going to be because I've been doing this ever since nearly, 10 years after the Family Law Act was written, and people always want to argue silly points.
So I guess high conflict people probably would hang on to the cheating and the babysitter issue and the business deal's gone wrong and who earned the most because that's something they can argue till they're blue in the face.
That's right. And they can't settle because they want some sort of justice or whatever.
So you've got to remind yourself, if you've got a high conflict ex that you're dealing with, you can say, look, they can argue about all of this, but tell it to the judge because they ain't going to care.
It's not going to work.
Yeah.
That's
so I
right.
guess for the high conflict people, this is probably a really helpful episode because not everything needs to be a fight, because when it comes down to it, yes, it's horrible or bad things, whatever, but in the end, 10 minutes late to pick up or drop off
isn't the end.
Tell
of
it to the judge.
Yeah.
Don't bother fighting it.
And a high conflict person, it's a good person usually to put your offers in that show you being reasonable, because some high conflict people, even if the offer's reasonable, unless there's some acknowledgement of the things they want clarified, they can't bring themselves to accept the offer, but at least get your offer in so that you can show the judge later.
Now, lastly, amicable. So they're the people that are, we're just doing this. We've got to get this sorted.
Yeah.
Is there anything in the tell it to the judge realm that, they need to be mindful of?
I think just stick to what the law requires. Don't put any gratuitous stuff in because that might turn them from amicable to something else. So I'm always quite thoughtful about what I put in. Present the case without stirring up too much trouble, because if you're amicable but you're still in court, it's just a difference of opinion and you need an adjudicator.
Yeah, but you don't want to turn it from amicable to
nasty, high conflict. Yeah, that's right. So I would say, as far as telling it to the judge, it's good to tell the judge all the things you do agree on.
Yeah.
And you can narrow the issues, and your lawyer can say, Your Honour, the parties agree on pretty well everything except how to treat this inheritance, or what was their contribution, or how to treat that business that went belly up during their relationship.
Okay. All right. Well,
that'll keep your costs down.
Yeah. So aim to not upset them. Aim to try and keep it amicable by leaving these things out. If they did cheat on you, don't bring it back up, because it doesn't really matter, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, it's absolutely. And don't exaggerate. I mean, you might still be hurt.
Yeah.
Of course you might still
Of course. It'd be horrible to be stabbed in the chest.
I can remember one memorable case where someone said that they went on a holiday with the children, but they only came out of their bedroom for meals. This was the ex with the new partner.
Oh, gosh.
And, of course, that's nonsense.
Yeah.
And it's so inflammatory and it's intrusive and it's irrelevant. It doesn't fit into any of the categories.
Oh, as in they only came out of the bedroom for meals because they were busy.
In the bedrooms, not looking after the children. But, that's so unwarranted, and it was so irrelevant to the court.
It just upset them.
And it just made.
So it is if that is true, or if you thought that's what happened, if the kids came back and told you that, you'd be like, "Oh my goodness,
how dare he?
Get yourself sorted." She? That's terrible. Yeah. But inflaming the situation, telling the judge that would be embarrassing for them, for you, and also make them angry.
That's right. And remember, when you're telling it to the judge, all evidence in the family courts are done by affidavit. So once it's written down, it's been sent to put into the court, it's been sent to your own lawyer who's read it. The shame, and it just feels, I imagine it just makes it so much worse than if you flung it to the other person on a phone call. Yeah, and it came out.
It's worse because there's random people you don't really know reading about what you've done.
That's right, and it's there forever.
But in saying that, don't hold back if they've done horrible things that do matter.
That do matter, absolutely.
But right. it is. I understand how hard it would be to deal with that when you're like, this is horrible. But, and again, we've talked about the pendulum of DV. If they've really upset you and everything they do now is just gets in your craw. But the thing is, you need to understand that until you settle, until this is all over, you got to kind of try and not inflame it, not fan the flames, not throw kindling on the fire, because all it's doing is going to hurt you by making the argument bigger or upsetting them more. Because you're like, I don't care. I'm cool if they're upset. They deserve to be upset. They stayed in a room for the whole holiday. But in the end, it hurts you. It does, and it makes the matter drag on longer. Yeah. When we talked about that DV pendulum, I might just quickly remind our listeners what that is. Yes. So when people have been through domestic violence, they often will come to me or come to their lawyers and be very timid, not wanting to do too much, probably taking a long time to go to the lawyer, and they're saying, oh, my ex is really clever and, I don't want to upset them. The classic is I don't want to touch his super or her super. I've agreed I won't touch her inheritance. And then gradually, as they've distanced themselves from the DV and they're getting a better perspective, they become more counselling. Yeah, counselling. They become more sort of even about it, more even-tempered about it. But unfortunately, one of the reactions to severe DV or DV is you then go beyond that to being hyper. I've observed it. Yeah. They seem to be hyper triggered by anything the other side says. Why should I file a cost notice? He's always told me what to do, or she's always telling me what to do. And so everything they tell you to do then feels like a continuation of the abuse. But it's very hard to deal with a person who's gone past the normal reactions to the very sort of
defiant almost or hypersensitive stage. So if you're doing that, you need to be aware of that and try to moderate your response, at least until after the court case.
Because really what it's doing is making it worse for you.
And you've put up with a lot through the relationship if you're going through this, so you can continue. Yeah.
The judge doesn't care about probably that it's not really in the Family Law Act. It's something maybe that you need to just go and deal with it in a different environment. If there's something that's really bothered you that the Family Law Act doesn't really care about, go and see a friend, a psychologist, your mum, or your dad, or, go and have a chat and get it out, vent it, journal it, whatever. But don't share your journal with anyone because you don't want that ending up in court. But get it out, but not in that space, not in that environment, because it's just going to make the situation worse.
And not on social media either.
Yes, good point. All right. Well, thank you, Mum, for giving us those tips, because we do get a lot of those messages, so I can now say, listen to this episode.
Yes.
But if you are interested, you can check out the www.thedivorcecourse.com.au and you can find our free checklists. You can also register for our webinar that's coming up, or you can become a member and do our DIY divorce course. Yeah. If you found this podcast helpful, we'd love it if you could rate, review and subscribe. By doing so, you are spreading the word to help someone else just like you. Lynn would like to remind you that this podcast is general advice only, and you should always get legal advice in relation to your particular situation. And remember that the Australian laws may have changed since recording.